I want to talk about a sort of forgotten renewable energy source, which is biomass. So, over at the Institute for Energy Research, they recently had an article about European biomass use, which in 2014 was 40% of renewable energy there and is expected to reach over 50% by 2020. So, it's the largest renewable energy source, although not as much advertised as wind and solar, of course. And it seems to be the fastest growing right now. And so the idea behind biomass as renewable is, of course, that trees and energy crops can regrow. And as they grow, they absorb as much CO2 from the atmosphere as they release when they are burned. So they are sort of CO2 neutral. Now, there are some problems with that concept, of course, because other inputs like fertilizers and so on have to go into that process. But be that as it may. So one advantage of biomass over wind and solar is that, as a solid fuel that can be stockpiled, it can produce reliable energy on demand. And but there's a problem with that, and that is scalability. So the Institute for Energy Research has this England power plant that's using wood pellets in old coal power plants. But it has to import two-thirds of the wood pellets from North America. And this reminded me of some Danish energy statistics that I had to go through not that long ago. And Denmark is also very big on biofuels, and particularly also biomass for district heating and electric power generation. And actually, biomass makes up a much larger percentage of total energy in Denmark than wind power. Of course, Denmark, everyone associates with wind power, but not biomass for some reason. And this is just a bit anecdotal right now, but I think you can see a problem here when the leaders in adopting biomass as a renewable alternative fuel have to import so much biomass from other countries. This is clearly not scalable. When America and Canada go into biomass, where are they going to import that from, right?
Where
So
do you
maybe
have data on the cost? Because anecdotally, I know some people who have invested in this, and they think, "Oh, this is fantastic," because these gullible Europeans with their renewable mandates are willing to pay a relative fortune for wood pellets.
so in the article, the Institute for Energy Research says something like 1.2 billion subsidies per year for this one giant English power plant. So this is, of course, government mandated and subsidized, and so this could be for some businesses. This could be very beneficial. Of course, the taxpayer will be hurt by that.
Got it. Well, this is an interesting example of the the short-termism of meeting these different renewable mandates, because the core idea behind the renewable mandates is that they are supposed to represent progress toward being powered by essentially 100% solar and wind, including storage, with some sort of storage mechanism. And that is not something that's remotely economic for reasons that have been discussed on many other episodes. I mean, the short version is just they don't give you energy at all when you need it. And to get it from those sources, you would need to just massively overbuild them so that at the maximum point you'd have way more energy than you would need, and then certainly the minimum point you'd have almost no energy or no power, and then you need some just insane amount of storage so that you could capture all of the excess energy produced and then deliver it when there's very little energy being produced. And as I've run the numbers on that, I mean, I said if you wanted if you wanted a battery equivalent to 1 day's use of energy around the world, that would be $100 trillion by optimistic battery prices a few years from now. And then that also comes from that's using fossil fuels to build all that stuff, not using the unreliables to build it, which would be a whole other thing. And that's 25% more than the GDP of the world. So it's this thing that it's this very bad idea. And yet, so how are people meeting it? Well, they're meeting it through parasitism off fossil fuels by saying, okay, we're going to produce some wind, but we're going to have fossil fuels as life support all the time. So then we don't have to do this overbuilding of capacity, and we don't have to do this overbuilding of storage, which is extremely expensive because we got fossil fuels to back us up and to give us 100% reliability at any given time. So we can be a parasite in that way, or we can use non-scalable plant-based ways of doing this, which are not the publicized ways of doing this. So we can use things like waste alcohol, or we can use certain amounts of forests, and we can take advantage of the fact that people are willing to pay a lot for this for now. But I don't know of anyone who's really talking about who talks about, when they say the dream, is saying that, okay, the dream is that we're just going to plant all of these trees and cut them down and chop them into wood pellets, and that's going to really be the world's energy source. That would be kind of an interesting thing to claim. And it might, I mean, if you could do it, it would be an interesting have all sorts of pollution challenges with it, but it has a certain kind of plausibility, I think, that the others don't, but it has very, very little plausibility. So you can see that nobody is really doing the core thing that they're claiming to do, which is power your life reliably with solar, wind, and storage.